It's the weekly 30-30 trading list on the ASX. We're looking at the 30 best momentum companies over the last quarter, and also a list of the 30 companies that have had the best improvement this week, what we call the Launchpad. Gary Glover has been through both lists and pulled out his favourite charts for the week. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris.
Did you find any good charts in that quarterly momentum?
Yeah, no, there's a few charts in there. I know we were going to, I often leave a trading quite towards the end here, but I kind of feel like this one is, I look at this chart in front of us, the quote comes directly to mind here. So it's a Jesse Livermore quote, and men who can both be right and sit tight are uncommon. So when we look at this sort of chart here, the stock's obviously popped here, and there's a little BCP, and obviously in that sort of early sort of May period, and then we started to see some volume in June there. But as we often talk about, when we see a big volume come into a move, that's when those sort of breakouts and stuff can kick on here. But hasn't broken a swing low all the way up here so far. And probably look pretty long on the tooth there, because each time you look at it in chart, it looks like it's if you go up 100% or 200%, 300%, it always looks overbought on a daily chart. So as we're watching it play, but it just goes to show you sometimes the momentum stocks here, they can, as we've been sort of saying here all along, is that those the leaders continue to lead and they keep trending up here. So there's pretty strong breadth in that move there, some pretty strong volume all the way through there. So hasn't shown too many signs of weakness there. So
it barely touched the 20-day moving average after May.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is, just think about these things. It's like sometimes, like when we're sort of going through these stocks here, is that, the top 2 or 3 stocks here each week, it's almost probably worth writing them down. And, end of the month, they're actually going through those stocks and actually having a look at detail. And those sort of, like William O'Neill, the founder of, IBD and, kind of momentum stocks there. He's created books there where, you learn, you study the past winners and basically, the characteristics and how they're traded and the setups there. There's a lot of commonality in those setups there. So, whether it's these cup and handles, these VCPs, it's there's just a lot of commonality in the setups, in the sort of stocks and nature of the trading, and characteristics. There's obviously, in some cases here in the US, there's a lot of, fundamentals and earnings there, but, sometimes there's a lot in the charts as well that can be replicated as well. So, but there's the cracking chart here, the AZS, and that's number 2, Chris, and that's number 1. So, interesting. Talked about Nuix there a couple of weeks ago. So, there was a good question there for one of the viewers there about, sort of buying a sort of gap up, which was sort of like something like Hello World gap up this week on good news, Chris, but then it sort of faded. So why hasn't that one kicked on when it's some good news? And like, why does Nuix kick up good news and continue to run? So oftentimes, the answer there is what does the market know? What's the market thinking sort of leading into those results? So, if there's stuff like Nuix here and stuff, it's had a really, really down move there, full of negativity, and everyone's expecting the worst. And then, we saw it with MP1 as well. That had sort of gone through a little bit of a downward cycle there, changed the CEO. But then all of a sudden you get an unexpected change, you get a better result than everyone's thinking, almost technically, if the chart would be like a change in character, you might say the stock's got a change in character in its performance, then that's unexpected there because everyone's probably positioned the other way. And so with something like a Hello World, obviously travel's been running hot. It's all good news, Everyone's expecting now the good news to follow through because we've sort of seen so much good news into that, that movement. So sometimes when that's overly expected, that's when you sort of get your, either in a sell the fact there. It's like the banks are classic sort of signs. If you do look over the decade there, you'll see sometimes banks will run into the results, and the result will come out to be a cracking result, and then they get sold off. and then if it's a poor result, everyone's expecting a poor result. The market will run down at that poor result, then bad news will come out, and then it's all out there, and then that's usually the point where it will decline there. So those sort of that can be the end of the move there, because it's all about what's known here. So I think when you see things that are largely unknown and a bit of a game changer in terms of what the market's thinking, that's when you can get a gap and a run. So that's probably the best way to think about, sort of trying to trade stocks that sort of do gap up on good news, or maybe gap down on bad news. How much of it is known in the marketplace? If it's completely unknown, everyone was thinking the opposite, going the other way, then that's probably when you can get a move which will follow through.
So is that almost like with the interest rate decisions going back 6-9 months ago, when we were expecting 25 basis jump after month? It wasn't really news when it was announced. It was just a formality. The market was expecting it. There were 95% chances of those 25 jumps. So when it was actually announced, the move didn't actually have too much of an effect on the markets, because most of the market was expecting it already. Is that kind of a similar market expectation?
Yeah, there's a level of positioning as well coming into results as well. So, it's oftentimes, well, just think about the concept there, sort of buy the rumor, sell the fact there. Sort of when the news comes out, is that, has the stock run up into that good news? Or has the stock run down into that bad news? So oftentimes you're sort of like, stock might be running down. Bad news comes out, stock sort of gaps down to that bad news. But that's oftentimes that ends up being a low, because then it's all known. All the insiders probably knew earlier. Everyone else is starting to learn that, well, it could be something's broken here. And then finally at the end, everyone knows, and then bang, you're out. And then that's the point where all the selling's done there. Everyone who's sold is already out. So that's why you got to think about this sort of conceptually, who's already positioned there. That's why sort of something comes from left field, no one knows. Everyone was expecting the rest of the market's actually thought the other way here. Classic. I mean, just look at Nuix. Everyone was expecting, it's had a pretty tough couple of years here. Everyone's expecting the worst and gets a pretty good result here. I think Digger Data today actually had a pretty good result as well. That's been a bit of a laggard here as well. So that's probably one to sort of keep an eye on as well. But yeah, it's all expectations that after Nuix there, we got ASM, sort of one that sort of had a little bit of it, sort of kind of tight price action there. I mean, for me, really, the only sort of decent signal I saw was sort of breaking above this little congestion there. This had a few touches in there. This was probably the first day breaking out on decent volume there. So, you wouldn't have touched this before then, because that's sort of, in a pretty nasty downtrend still. You definitely want to see a breakout on volume there. What else we got there? WC8. Wildcat Resources, sort of one that I think has been on the list for a while here. Again, I think we've sort of openly talked about how there hasn't been much volume on the pullback. So, we're seeing pretty good volume on the rallies. Pullbacks have been very, very light volume. So, again, it's just the ability to sit, when you're right, sit tight, as they say, it's not easier said than done, as we know, Chris. Very uncommon, as Jesse Livermore puts it, but it is. Sometimes we just got to sit tight here. But I think this is probably one of the more cracking charts here, because this, again, we've got a BCPs in there. We've sort of got our little congestion, so we've sort of got this corrective sort of sideways move here, but struggling to go down. And like the whole thing, sort of like a bit of impulsive there, corrective and corrective there, bit impulsive there, sort of corrective there. So it starts to sort of build here and getting out of here. So again, once you sort of start to see these sort of sideways orientated moves there, once they start to move out there, we saw here a bit of volume coming in too. So started to see this kick up here. So this might be the first day, you might be sort of getting starting to be like a little cup and handle in there, sort of, BCP sort of set up, starting to break up here, nice and tight in here. So, but yeah, you can see the sort of same sort of characteristics with a lot of these sort of moves here. So, yeah, no, it's just interesting there. XAM, again, pretty strong move or good volume there. It's had a bit of a pullback there, a bit of volume there, but seeing good volume again through here. The only thing to be mindful of there is this is probably slightly larger correction than say the whole move here. So that can be a bit of what I refer to being an overbalance. It's being probably just slightly too aggressive in its move here. I'm guessing that high volume week there is probably the week of the high. That's exactly it. So that's kind of like all your smart money. Waiting. Good news comes out, bang, the insiders are out. So that's how these sort of classic sort of small plays sort of work. So probably just got to be careful with that one there, just because it has drawn some sellers in there. Like MP1 and sort of 360 sort of stock like that was really talking about how that has been leading in it. So no surprise just to sort of see, getting a pretty strong moves here. So, even sort of seeing some pretty healthy volume there, pulling back on lighter volume and just sort of going again. Even again here, we've sort of seen some pretty, light volume in there. Going through a little bit of a consolidation. Probably didn't see too much volume on this rally here, but again, you're probably just waiting for another breather again. CCX is sort of one that I sort of didn't really like the other day, but I circled this actually yesterday because I thought, she looks quite good. Had a little pause in there, Chris, so that if I sort of drill into this move here, you can see there actually had some okay volume in there. Maybe the volume came in late there, but it didn't exhaust there. Then look at that. It's had a bit of a, congestion in there. We'll call that like a little flag, little pennant in there. And then pretty light volume for a big wide range. Another light volume there. And then like yesterday, all that. There's a volume there where you've seen like 2 or 3 days sort of selling. And then the selling just dries up completely. That's often the sort of, the day before your pivot day. So I thought that looked pretty interesting actually. So, yeah. We got the RDX. So these are all our sort of leaders there. So I thought this one is interesting just because it's actually quite a new stock here. So open up, sort of faded, come back there, some reasonable volume, might sort of fade here. So probably got to put this on the watch list there just because it's sort of new company that's been sort of solid off the get-go there. There's definitely some reasonable volume on this rally off the lows there. So see if it maybe can't congest back in there. But yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on there. AEF was, I guess a couple of things I sort of saw in now. It's sort of like this is Australian Ethical Investment, so I think it's just a fund manager per se. So we saw quite a few fund managers even in the weekly end, sort of high on the list there, which is sort of saying that, like a lot of these closed funds, LICs and stuff there have been lagging as well. So I notice they're all sort of starting to move here. Obviously the market's moved, but they're all trading in a massive discount to NTA. I saw Jeff Wilson bought a fund the other day, like a competitor, but just bought like a 5% stake. Just was it a position for a corporate takeover? I think the reality was it was about 18-19% undervalued under NTA. So I think, as Jeff Wilson often puts, he's in the past he sort of said, if I can buy dollars worth of assets for 90 cents, I'm in. So at the moment, getting them for what 82, 83 cents, so for some of these assets. So it's interesting. Some of the LICs are definitely trading well under NTA. So no surprise to sort of see some of those kind of popping here. So
that's something you and I have looked at, and we cover on the daily top 10 Manic podcast. Is that these themes, the whole fund managers and wealth managers and listed investment companies and active managers, just for the last week or 10 days, their momentum has actually been quite high, which is rare to see in this part of the cycle. So maybe that's what's been happening. There's a lot of buyers like Jeff Wilson out there mopping up and putting a bit of floor under some of these stocks.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, so I sort of noticed on the list there, sort of had like some of the funds there, some of the telcos as well, which sort of has been a bit of a sector which has been unloved. So that I think the TPG focus there is sort of you know, got like a bit of corporate action to get a sector alive again. So that was kind of our quarterly our list there. Looking at the weekly then, so looking at what sort of moved here this week here. The KI was on the list there. Just like this one, it's had a bit of a big jump and a bit of a fill again, but the volume has come back in again. Probably a little small for me, but interesting there that we're sort of seeing some volume jump back in. Number 2 is sort of baby bunting there. So seeing here, like, Temple Webster's still running pretty hot there, Chris. I mean, that, geez, that's, how solid's that been? So, yeah, so some of the retailers still motoring here. It's sort of in the face of what, rising interest rates, sort of recession looming, don't go near retail, and yet, what are those retail stocks doing? They're going up here. So, so baby bunting's pretty interesting there. That was pretty exhaustive type volume down at the low there. Sort of building here. Just, again, we've had some pretty good volume through there as well. So, watching this thing consolidate again, it's still consolidating on top of the previous high there. Pretty light volume here so far, so still looks sort of somewhat constructive to me. So, 3DP, just a bit of a gap there and a bit of a move there. A bit hard to trade. TIE was sort of one that I thought was interesting. I think there was a little, not that these are the small ones there, but we're trending down here, it's hard to buy, but then you do break the swing high there in this point here, and that's sort of when they can sometimes change there, but pretty hard to get involved in some of those. WR1 here. Don't mind look at this actually, Chris. This is we've largely had a bit of a pretty impulsive rally here to the high here. We've now had a bit of a corrective decline here. Now the whole thing's sort of flattening out in here as well. So we've definitely got our BCP in here. Last thing on the chart here is we're definitely seeing some good volume on this leg up here. I think the volume was okay through this leg here, and then look at the how light the volume is through there. So not a lot of selling there. Excuse me. Even off the first leg here, that's pretty light selling as well. The volume through there is not bad off the low here. So, definitely one to keep an eye on here. This is sort of setting up quite nicely. I mean, a nice little congestion here, like maybe 4 or 5 days on its side here. A little,
feel like SYM.
Little tight consolidation there will definitely be worth keeping an eye on there. So I think that looks pretty interesting there. So it's Winston Resources, CXL. Thought this looks pretty interesting as well. So Calix, this is sort of like almost more of a big sort of cap sort of stock here. Bit of a VCP setting up in here. Still haven't. You probably want to see a bit of a breakout of here. Maybe sort of kick up out of the range here, but pretty tight there. I think I saw S32, Chris, was sort of one that's got similar sort of little VCP in here at the moment. Sort of congesting sort of solid there. I think maybe Raincorp might have had that, had that previously as well there, a little VCP and then coming through there, but I don't know, it can be a bit of a tricky there. You probably want to see these sort of lower VCPs in here, like this, and then you move there. But just get the feeling it's going to be a bit of a messy kind of market here. So I don't think it's going to be full scale, massive moves there, but let's just some pretty good news, and then obviously that don't see too much selling on the pullback there. But I think there'll probably be. I was sort of thinking it'd be a bit more measured there on some of the rallies there. But this looks quite good as well, actually. It's sort of Regal investment there, which is sort of not get another fund manager there. Not my favorite fund manager, but again, this is sort of squaring off here. Actually, there's some decent volume coming through here. So has sort of kicked up out of the range there. So just seeing probably, I guess if the market is going to run here, continue to move higher there, and like a lot of those sort of closed funds are all trading under NTA. That market keeps running up. Some reasonable yield there that, as you say, these other funds will start buying up some of these other funds that are trading at a discount. So that's already started to occur here. OPT was sort of one sort of small here, pretty light volume so far. So, but you get a little VC forming in there, but they don't always work out there. I think I talked about one last week there. I think it was and that was what was it?
So what was it when we were looking at OPT? You could see it tightening up, but the volume looked a little bit haphazard, a little bit.
Yeah, I was looking at one last week, which was sort of what was called there out.
You put OPT on the chart there. We'll have a look while you find the one that you want to look at. But looking at OPT, I mean, the critical things that you often mention are the 50-day moving average, which is that red line. It's been under it, but it is coming back and toying, getting back over it. But then sort of the last 4 days when it's been over it, it has been sold down a bit. So while it is compressed in volatility and over the 50-day, would you say that's broken the B wave in the middle of July, or not quite yet? You'd look for the start of July, would you?
Yeah, look, it's still sort of downtrending here. It's just sort of the thing of, you don't want to jump in too early there. I think, so it was actually Silex I was talking about there. That was sort of made that was sort of, this whole thing was sort of tightening up in here, made a bit of a, looked like a little BCP in here. But then we sort of saw it didn't break above swing high. And then I think it went within a cent and then it's faded here again. So
that cent was also close to the 50-day moving average, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So right on it there. So you sort of look quite good there. So this is the sort of thing, sort of jumping in. So I actually did have a little starting posi in here. Then I wouldn't have added it to it until it had broken above. I think it was 389, and it didn't. I think it went to about 386 this month. So didn't break above that point there. So this is why because they can sort of turn. So they turn down here. I'm straight out of this. Like I'm out there faster than. I just don't hang around. I'm happy to take a $3 or $4 loss and be down a few cents. As soon as it doesn't look right, I'm out all the time. But it just goes to show that that's the sort of discipline that you've sort of got to have there with these sort of when you're trading these patterns there, because a lot of them will sort of continue to fail. That's why you get away from them to sort of break there sometimes. Everyone's trying to cheat that. These sort of little triggers all the time there. So you can see that IBT, that no reason to buy this here yet. Still pretty strong downtrend here. You just want to sort of see this sort of break up out of here. You probably want to see a bit of volume there because so far it's been fairly lackluster. The only thing I sort of see, and I see a bit of heavy selling here, which is kind of people sort of throwing the value out of the basket at the end, which typically happens, sort of almost exhaustive of downtrend. So that's the only thing I can see there, which is sort of positive there, apart from a little BCP sort of setup. But you really want to see it break out before you get involved there. RIC was sort of one, again, it's sort of, maybe flatten up a little bit there. Volume's still pretty light there, but yeah, not too much, but that's about it. I mean, probably the big thing there was there's quite a few, I think TPG was in the list there. Quite a few of the sort of telcos moving all right. I think even there's Swoop, another small telco there, bit of a BCP sort of setting up in there. So there's just a few telcos in that list, that sort of sector there, sort of coming back there. So just a sector which is sort of getting a bit of traction there. That's about it, really. I think, I think this sort of might be a tricky period in front of us here. I'm still sort of positive of the market, but I think it's might be the second half of the year might be a bit of a grind here, Chris. It might be, it's Chris Karcher and those sort of guys there, sort of buying breakouts there. It could be tough. Might need to come up with a plan B strategy there to sort of try and, maybe those stronger stocks, wait for them to sort of pull back to the 10 or 20-day moving average. Just might need to adjust your sort of strategy there to the market conditions.
Well, it's a good thing you've got a whole playbook of strategies that you go to, and you also break them down for us on Tuesdays. So you've found a list, you've added to the watch list the companies that you'll be looking at next week or couple of weeks. And as you pointed out earlier, just off air, you print off the list of these 30-30 lists and look back a couple of weeks at a time just to see if there are any trade setups that have firmed up, shored up, and become more appealing. So will it still be a similar approach that you'll be taking for the weeks ahead?
Yeah, I do. I got I got my lists. I do the 300 every weekend. I try and do a lot of the stocks that have sort of got high revenue growth and high profit growth. I got my scans for the midweek that I do. I look through the last 2 years of IPOs as well, just to sort of see, there should be some new leaders, new stocks coming through. So I go through those each week, and I go through your momentum stocks and I write notes on those as well. So traders are going to become creatures of habits. You got to have these habits you just sort of keep doing. I was listening to Tom Basso this morning with it's pretty much he was called Mr. Serenity in the Market Wizards, but pretty much he's such a calm guy, but it basically is it's process. That's what he stands for, and it's pretty interesting.
Right. So his comfort and serenity in markets in terms of turmoil come from his consistent approach of just process.
Yeah. It's obviously talking about human nature is so it's like even him being a CT trend trader, a trend trader, sort of saying when markets have their drawdowns, the worst time, that's usually the time to stay with a trend trader, because that's sort of normally you've gone through turbulent times of the market, and then that's when you get the big trend trading. And he was saying when he's been, because he's got different funds, he was sort of saying, if my fund's been on its hair, we've just had a cracking, 12 months, and I've just hit it out of the park. So that's usually the time I'll usually take money out of my own fund and put it into someone else's funds who's been underperforming, because they sort of turn around and swing around. But he said that he's written white papers on this in terms of shifting your the movement there. But he said the reality is that retail will tend to do all the wrong things at all the wrong time. They'll add to the stocks that have already had these been trending up for years, sort of come in late in the piece, and the ones that have sort of underperformed, they'll sort of cut those and switch strategies all at the wrong time there. So it's interesting sort of stuff. It's human nature, as we know. We'll have to sort of revisit Daniel Kahneman's some of those sort of stuff there, because there's some cracking human traits there that and from a trading perspective, there's sort of that are quite common there. So just actually knowing some of those is quite good. Actually, just will stop us from sort of making a few trading mistakes.
Yes, and being cognizant of them at the time can help us sort of correct them either in the time or hopefully next time they come up.
Yeah, I think that there was one that really sort of just something simple like not making peace with a loss. And his research was basically highlighted that if you lost during the first half of the day, you're much more likely to take greater risk in the afternoon. Whereas if you're up trading, all going well, you sit tight, you don't do too much. You follow your process. But if human nature, if we get behind or if we have a bad morning, we tend to take a risk in the afternoon. So because human nature is we can't accept losses. We don't like losses. But this is part of trading. You've got to come to accept it. It's a process. Sometimes you're getting stopped out. If you got your process in place there, I mean, the beauty of sort of getting stopped out is all of a sudden you cashed up again. You've kept it all sort of tight, and then you can look for new trading opportunities, and so you just got to have that sort of positive mindset with your losses there. It's it's just part of the process.
Good trading psychology, good watch list for the weeks ahead, and good insights on the markets. So we'll wrap on that. Thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
Gary's mentioned a fair few things in there and the trading approaches that he takes. His Tuesday podcast has a whole playlist on the right, as well as a whole breakdown of many of the strategies that he's talked about. And some of them he hasn't been using in the latest markets, but might be using as the market conditions change. Finally, on that left-hand side is Gary's Twitter handle if you want to follow him there.